and was also the only Southern senator who did not leave with his state, would be a good way to bring some of the Democrats back over to the side of the Union. And it worked. He won his second election. And whenever it came time to do the inaugurations, Abe Lincoln went first, completely eloquent as always, just a complete genius and a great public speaker. And then you had Andrew Johnson. How do I put this lightly? Andrew Johnson was a drunk. In fact, both people I'm talking about today were drunks.
I'm pretty sure all presidents are.
Oh yeah, a lot of them are. You would be surprised how many presidents have DUIs. But Johnson was the kind of drunk in the same sense that a comedian is a drunk. He takes a few shots before he goes on stage because he's like, okay, this will help with the nerves a little bit. Johnson decided to do that before his inauguration. And when he was giving his speech, he was slurring his words. He was visibly completely drained of all forms of energy. He was rambling like a motherfucker. It would pretty much be the equivalent of if you went to a graduation and the valedictorian spoke first, and then the salutatorian came up and he was just completely hungover from a pre-graduation party the night before, and right in the middle of his speech, he just pukes on the first 3 rows, Exorcist style. And he had a lot of problems coming into office, mainly because
he was drunk.
Yes, mainly because he was drunk, but also because of the fact that we were in a period that was now called Reconstruction. Reconstruction was not only about uniting the Union once again. It was also about making sure that all the things that were fought for in the Civil War were then enforced. And Johnson, again, was a Southern Democrat. Much like Lincoln, he wanted to take a position of leniency towards the South, but there are a lot of Republicans from the North, known as the Radical Republicans, who were fucking furious. And who did they take all of their anger out on? Why, the Southern Democrat president, of course. And so Congress tried everything they could to block every single measure that Johnson tried to enact. And Johnson responded in the way that all great presidents have: fuck you, I do what I want. Thank you to the South Park fans who actually get that.
Yeah, man.
And so it got to a boiling point whenever Congress passed the Tenure of Office Act. Now, the Tenure of Office Act was something that was passed to make sure that no president could fire a cabinet member or a Supreme Court judge without Congress's say-so. Now, if you know anything about the executive branch and the president's jobs, a big part of that job is the ability to fire your cabinet members and Supreme Court justices. That is pretty much your big domestic job. And Johnson reacted to this by taking out his Johnson and rubbing his giant balls of steel on the face of every congressman, as if each one of them was a teenage runaway that he'd picked up off the side of the road.
Nice.
And as you can imagine, Congress was upset. Because what he did, he didn't fire just anybody. He fired Edwin Stanton, who was the Secretary of War under Abraham Lincoln. And this pissed Congress off, so much that they filed impeachment articles against him, 13 of which in total, and 9 were specifically for the violations of the Tenure of Office Act, which was pretty much Congress saying, dude, what the fuck? And he almost got impeached. He almost got removed from office. Had it not been for one vote. One vote kept this guy from getting impeached. How much you want to bet that person was from Florida?
Florida wasn't around yet, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Florida was a state at that point.
Okay, cool.
And then he as you can imagine, he was not a very popular president. And so he did not win re-election. Instead, The man elected was a man named Ulysses S. Grant, the hero of the North during the Civil War. Another drunk. Now, with Ulysses S. Grant, it was more apparent that he was a drunk. He was the first president to ever get a DUI, which a lot of people wonder, oh, what was that like? I feel bad for the officer. I feel really bad for the police officer, because what do you tell your superiors when you pulled over the President of the United States riding a horse and buggy and completely intoxicated? You can't explain that away. But then I think about Grant. What was his reaction? I like to think that because he was such a consummate drunk, he turned into an 18-year-old blonde girl. And just, it's all right, it's okay, no. Look, I know this guy, I know this guy. He's going to vouch for me. He's the President of the United States. He'll say that I'm cool. Mr. President, you are the President of the United States. Shit, when did he get here? I didn't see him come in. Now, Grant had to fight his way through life because he was given the name Hiram Ulysses Grant when he was born. For those of you that don't know, that stands for HUG. The abbreviation is HUG. And so when he decided that he was going to join the military, he kind of saw that as a problem. And so he changed his name to Ulysses Simpson. And making his name U.S. Grant, biggest career move he could have made at that point, because that pretty much cemented what would become one of the most badass nicknames to ever be given to any general. He was known as Unconditional Surrender Grant. When you're going up against a guy named Unconditional Surrender, your fate's pretty much sealed. You can't win a war going up against a guy whose nickname involves the thing you're going to be doing after the war. And Grant could have been a great president. He really could have, if it wasn't for one simple fact. He had a shitty judgment in friends. He appointed his friends to cabinet positions, and they immediately stole a shitload of money. It was one of the most corrupt administrations in history, and pretty much destroyed any hopes for Reconstruction. And a lot of people will blame other presidents, but no, Grant's corrupt administration helped to fully create the political machines that we had to deal with, that I'll be talking about in my next segment. Thank you guys very much. I've been Art Zager.
All right, baby.